The views expressed in this interview are those of the individuals and do not reflect the official policy or position of the U.S. government, the Department of Defense, the U.S. Navy, or the Naval Postgraduate School. Welcome to the Trident Room, brewer of stout conversation, unfiltered and on tap. On today's episode, Trident Room host Karl Flynn sits down with Colonel Jason Perry.
Feels like no time has passed at all. We're already 30 minutes. So.
Is that right?
Yeah.
All right. Way too much fun.
Fair enough. So, looking at
nothing funner than talking about me. Sorry for all the listeners out there.
Oh, data point of one, but I'm very much interested in the conversation so far. So I'm sure our listeners will be as well.
All right.
So looking ahead, so after battalion command tour, so end of 2012,
Mm-hmm.
and then. Sorry, it jumps around between operational tours and then supporting tours. So after 2012, what was the
I was kind of in limbo. I got back to and I was still a lieutenant colonel, not selected for 06 yet, and so I got orders to MSTP, the MAGTAF Staff Training Program, and that was awesome too. I was a warfighting instructor and observer controller that went around to all the MEFs and taught doctrine, and then we do MEF exercises where we put the MAGTAF staffs through their operational paces and do almost like TTECG. If you've been to 29 Palms, we have the coyotes out in 29 Palms that put
familiar.
battalions through their paces, and we would do the same thing with the MEFs, only in a CPX environment, a command post exercise type environment. So that I was just there for a year though, because I got selected for promotion fairly soon after that.
Got it. Okay.
And then immediately went to become the branch head in Pacific Division at Headquarters Marine Corps in PP&O, Plans, Policies, and Operations.
Okay.
Headquarters Marine Corps, Pentagon, back to the Pentagon.
And so from there, so was that 20? So that was after.
Oh goodness, that was 2017.
Okay.
So, but this was interesting because as a captain and a major, I had been at OSD negotiating realignment of U.S. forces in Japan and in the Asia-Pacific region with Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that was relocating Marines on Okinawa to Guam. Part of that was building replacement facilities for the current Marine Corps Air Station Futenma, which includes building an airfield at Camp Schwab.
Okay.
And negotiating that with the government of Japan. Given all those agreements back in 2006-07 when I was at OSD.
Oh, that's okay.
This is back to OSD. This is what I did as a major and a captain at OSD. The Marine Corps created an organization called Pacific Division that was the program manager for all those realignment initiatives in the Pacific.
Interesting.
So here's kind of full circle coming back to where now I'm the branch head of the organization that is managing the implementation of the agreements we negotiated with the Japanese back in 2006. So it's a lot to take in, but that's kind of how it all played out.
That's very interesting. So because between my first UDP and second UDP, on the first UDP, I remember they were still putting in pilings and starting to dredge up stuff for the airfield.
Building the wall.
Right.
Yep.
And then the second deployment, they had concrete pilings and they were already starting to fill.
And dirt was going in.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So this is the closure of that circle, and that is that in 2018, I assumed command of 4th Marine Regiment.
Right.
Which is when you and I
almost crossed
paths. Almost crossed paths.
Yep.
So between 2018 and 2020, I commanded 4th Marine Regiment and had as the Camp Schwab commander.
Right.
So now I'm at Camp Schwab and had and actually got to
see your plan.
See the plan start to come into actual tangible results, and to see landfill starting to happen, and to see seawalls going up, and to work with the local community and address some of their concerns, and command an infantry regiment at the same time, and which again, the culmination of experiences, it's a little uncanny, you know. So that was kind of a full circle moment for me as well, to be able to go back to Camp Schwab and 4th Marine Regiment and to see both my FAO experiences and my experiences as an infantry officer kind of come together in one place and at one time.
That is really almost spooky how well.
A little spooky, right?
Yeah,
you'd almost think we could have planned it that way, but
right.
Yeah. But so again, just a very fortunate to have been given the opportunities I was given.
That's all the experiences, because the groundwork you laid, going straight from being pulled from being a rifle company or weapons company commander to working for OSD, and then that groundwork that you laid, plus, like you said, all the experiences you had operationally as an infantry officer. Right. Yeah, doing all that. Wow, that's very interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of fun.
So just want to go back for a second.
Sure.
So 2015 to 2016.
Oh, gosh.
Liaison officer to the JSDF in Tokyo.
That's right. Okay, so, yep, good point. So after battalion command, I was selected for top-level schools. Mm-hmm. And my top-level school was the National Institute for Defense Studies in Tokyo, Japan.
Okay.
So Japan speaker, Japan FAO. I get selected. The Marine Corps sends the naval forces, the naval services send an officer every year. Mm-hmm. And we alternate between the Navy and the Marine Corps. So I was fortunate to get selected to go to the National Institute for Defense Studies, NIDS, mm-hmm. Which is basically, it's top-level schools. So, Naval War College equivalent, I guess, National Defense University equivalent in Japan. So this is, 05, 06 level PME.
So I take it you were there with equivalent rank officers in the JSDF?
Right.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah, so there's about 45, it's a small class, 45 or so officers. It's Japanese curriculum, right? You think going to Naval Postgraduate School, only doing this in a foreign language. Great appreciation for our international students here at Naval Postgraduate School. I personally empathize with every one of them who come here and embark in graduate level studies in a foreign language, because I've lived it, and it's a great experience. But yeah, our international students, I just stand in awe of them every day, because I can't understand half of what our professors say in English. Foreign language.
I was gonna say, so when I was still growing up, my family lived in Germany for 4 years, and so I went to elementary school in Germany, and I was fluent then. I'm definitely rusty now, but yeah, graduate level education, just all the technical words and all that.
I took an elective on space, and I came to Naval Postgraduate School not based on my science and technology background. So, it was a great experience and met so many good people there. But then when I graduated, I was approached by the commander of Marine Forces Pacific, whom I had worked with at OSD in 2005 and 6 and 7 timeframe. He said,
funny how things just keep.
I'm telling you, it is. Yeah, it's weird. Huh. So he asked me. He said, "Hey, I'd like to keep you in Tokyo as a liaison to the ground staff office, so basically the Japan Ground Self-Defense Force, the Army." Mm-hmm. And so I had the opportunity to work there in the Ministry of Defense in Tokyo with the Japanese.
So in your bio it says the JSDF, but you were specifically working with the JGSDF.
Yes, but at the time we were in the process of developing an amphibious capability within the Maritime Self-Defense Forces, and they don't have a Marine Corps, and they don't have the Marine Corps as a naval service within the Department of the Navy.
Right.
They don't have that, and so amphibious operations for them is inherently joint. And so, yes, I was the liaison officer to the Ground Self-Defense Force, which is our counterpart. Mm-hmm. But I spent a lot of time with the very students that I'd gone to NIDS with, working with the Maritime Self-Defense Force to sort through the embarkation requirements and the command and control for embarked Japan Ground Self-Defense Force units on Maritime Self-Defense Force ships that are not built for amphibious operations. And also the Japanese Navy doesn't really have a wing. They don't have a carrier air wing equivalent. And so when we talk about being able to the defense of the amphibious fleet and things like that, well, we need to be talking to the Air Self-Defense Force as well. So in Japan, amphibious operations are inherently joint, and so it was really a really good opportunity to take this one form of maneuver, this one form of operations, amphibious operations, and use that as a catalyst to enable jointness and then bilateral jointness with a key ally.
So there's a few things that come to mind there. So I believe now they call it the Amphibious Rapid Deployment Brigade.
They do. That's right. That was the name that was the name that they ultimately landed on. Prior to that, it was just an amphibious infantry regiment within the Western Army. Yeah.
Okay. And then the naval aviation side of the house. So if I remember correctly, since then it was actually U.S. Marine F-35s that were operating off of Japanese. I believe they're called like multi-mission destroyers or something like that. But it looks like an amphib, if I remember correctly.
They're part of the mine sweeper fleet. But
really?
They have flat because they're a helicopter deck.
Okay.
In a countermine role. So, landing on those flat decks that didn't happen until much later, I think. But at the time, we weren't doing that.
Okay.
But certainly, at the time, it was a time of exploring where the opportunities lie for amphibious interoperability. How do we leverage existing platforms and capabilities in a bilateral context? So very, very busy, very challenging, but kind of neat because fast forwarding to 4th Marines now, and the Amphibious Rapid Deployment Brigade is organized, and battalions, because the headquarters was organized first and then the battalions came along later. And to see the battalions rotating through periods of readiness. And the other thing is stand-in forces, because at the same time the Japanese are developing an amphibious capability, the Japanese forces, they're also developing brigades that have the ability to deploy to key maritime terrain and defend, Japanese sovereign territory in throughout 6,850 islands or something like that make up Japan. So, so really, in many ways, the Japanese, while they didn't call it this, they had already, I think, mentally transitioned to a real appreciation for the role of stand-in forces.
Where have I heard this before?
Right. And so now at 3MEF and at 3rd Marine Division, 4th Marine Regiment, and our focus, our recognition that, A2AD, anti-access area denial capabilities are real and they're only getting more challenging, that operating on key maritime terrain within the weapons engagement zone of a threat is a critical capability that we are not currently organized, trained, or equipped to perform. And so as a forward deployed, the only in that first island chain anyway, infantry formation, it became the urgency and the focus of effort and energy was just palpable. It was fantastic. And of course, for me, being able to interact with the Japanese in that capacity was just fantastic. I tell people I've had some great foreign area officer tours. My best was as a commanding officer of 4th Marine Regiment.
Fair enough.
So it was a great time.
That actually segues pretty perfectly into one of the specific questions I had. So sounds like you, in terms of what we think of as, MAGTAF type operations, having Marines embarked on an amphib, having their own organic aircraft, being able to conduct amphibious operations. One specific questions I had are there any technical and tactical lessons we should be learning from the JGSDF? And so it sounds like a lot of the stand-in force type stuff that we are, as a force, trying to get towards, they've already been working on for years now. Specifically, I don't know how much insight you have on this, but just this last month in the Gazette, there was an article about Japanese JGSDF anti-ship missile batteries, which is something that is just brand new to us. But they've had these for quite a while now.
Absolutely. Yeah. They have their Chusams and their Tansams and their radar capabilities, and so yes, I mean, and I would expand the conversation beyond Japan. Our allies across the globe, really, but our allies in the Asia Pacific are such a critical part of our ability to be, to deter crisis, to deter conflict in that region, because they bring capabilities that we don't have, and to the extent we can integrate those capabilities, it just expands our reach and it extends our culmination point, but all of that, of course, has to be integrated in some way.
Yes.
Whether it's interoperable, whether it's integrated through command and control, or whether some other technical means that it's integrated, and that's why I think allies and partners is such a critical part of our success, or our future success out there, in meeting some really challenging problem sets. That
is just looking at things from my lowly tactical perspective. Just without the Japanese, there's because we have so many forces stationed there, we have so many bases there, and then the JSDF, they have the JMSDF. They have a lot of very capable ships and submarines as well.
But I'd add to that, within the Philippines, and we worked a lot with the Philippine Marines as well, and they are bringing in operational concepts that are very much complementary to what we're looking at. The Australians have always been a really strong partner with us, and then we spent a lot of time in the Republic of Korea as well, working with the Marine Corps there, and so that network is really where the strength lies. That network of capabilities, and you can see all of these. You can just see the importance of those alliance relationships come to the forefront in vivid color when you start working with them at a very tactical level, and at the operational strategic level as well. But you see that just how important those relationships are today in a competition phase, and certainly increasingly would be increased, as we transition into conflict. Should that deterrence fail us? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Again, looking at just my limited tactical perspective, so I worked just a little bit with the JGSDF out in Camp Fuji. I feel so bad, but I can't remember the name of the JGSDF liaison. He was a lieutenant colonel. Just as soon as we showed up, he's like, "Oh, you're the new LAR officer." Oh, he's like, "I'm Lieutenant Colonel so and so." I'm like, "Oh, I'm Lieutenant Flynn. Hello, nice to meet you."
And we see that everywhere.
Right.
At 4th Marines, and that was the beauty of being at 4th Marines, is that I had the opportunity to send forces, and I very much viewed our role out there as not, we weren't training, we were conducting training, but we were competing in the operating space.
Right.
And that probably should go without saying, but sometimes you kind of need to remind people, I think, that those activities those operations, activities, and investments we make out there are contributing to this deterrent effect. And so we worked a lot with allies, but then, of course, we worked a lot with strategic partners as well. And so being able to send forces out to Singapore and work with the Singaporeans, with whom we have a great relationship with. We would go out to Malaysia or Indonesia or any number of countries in that area, was just really a lot of fun. It was something new all the time. It's like being deployed for 3 years with your family. I was 4 years ultimately, but with your family there it was kind of neat. It was like being on deployment, but you had your family with you. And you got to live in Japan, which is great too. That's in Okinawa.
Yeah. Hard to argue with that. Well, sir, we're approaching an hour already.
Well, we better close it up.
Well, so I hate to put you on the spot, but we've covered maybe half of
is that right?
what I actually wanted to ask you about.
That's just me running my mouth.
Well, I know you're incredibly busy, but was there some time, not near future, but sit down again and okay.
Like I said, if I can run my gums about me all day long, I guess, if that's what people want to hear.
Well, I
feel a little selfish about it, but it's yeah.
Well, again, data point of one, but I've been very much interested in what you've had to say so far. So I'm sure part two will be equally, if not more, interesting. Getting more into, we didn't even talk about your tenure as a senior Marine at all. Talking about GFX just a couple weeks ago and a lot of the other stuff you've been doing. So definitely excited for part two. But just in the meantime, again, thank you so much for your time and joining us. So
all right,
awesome. Looking forward to part two.
Likewise.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for joining us in the Trident Room. For more information about today's guest and topics, please visit the show notes. The Trident Room podcast has been brought to you by the Naval Postgraduate School Alumni Association and Foundation. For questions, comments, and suggestions, please email us at tridentroompodcasthost@nps.edu and find us online at nps.edu/tridentroompodcast.